familiar with the MyCalendarAlerts web app? It supercharges your online calendars with enhanced features for communication and triggering automations. If you're not familiar with MyCalendarAlerts, you can find an intro video on the MyCalendarAlerts channel. If you'd like to see how to configure MyCalendarAlerts to enable SMS text and trigger automations based on your personal or business calendar events, stay tuned and I'll show you how. Hi, welcome to the MyCalendarAlerts channel. My name is Doug and I'll give a quick overview of how to create and configure a free MyCalendarAlerts account to enable calendar-driven communications and automations. For this brief info, I'll highlight the key MyCalendarAlerts configuration settings so your contacts will receive timely event reminders through SMS text or chat app, and automations are being triggered by your calendar events. To give the setup a feel for a real-life use case, we'll approach these examples as if we're setting up an account to manage a short-term rental such as Airbnb. But these same settings would be suitable for any online calendar. So let's get started. When you go to the website, it will take you to the landing page, which gives some basic information. Scrolling down in the landing page, you'll see an overview, some typical calendars that are supported, and some typical features and use cases. At the top of the screen, you'll see the link to create a new account. For now, let's just go to the help docs. Here you will find details of the app features and how to create the account. In general, there's really just about 4 or 5 essential ingredients to creating the account. They're listed here under the Getting Started section. So basically, in the configuration setup, you're going to be specifying a sync URL for your calendars and a time zone so that you're getting alerts on time. You're going to have alert policies, and alert policies are basically just really simple but powerful reminder rules. They'll apply to all of your events. You'll add contacts, and these will be the people that will receive reminders. And you'll add remote APIs only if you want to trigger automations by calling webhooks or remote RPCs. But basically, once you get those down, then your system will be ready to go. There's other settings that we'll touch upon, but these are the essentials. The sync URL for your calendar and the time zone are set in the account configuration form. So let's scroll down to that section. So here you can see the first field that it talks about is a calendar sync URL. This is a required field and your account won't work without it. And although it's not too complicated to find the sync URL for your online calendar, it's the most likely place where people get tripped up on. So we add some extra details for the help for different calendars for you to find out how to get your access to your sync calendar to configure your account. Scrolling down, the next field is the time zone. Without this, your alerts and automations won't execute at the right time. So this is very important. The next field, premium SMS texting option, we're going to skip this for now. And the next field is webhooks and RPCs. These are remote APIs. But we're going to, for now, scroll down towards the bottom, and there's a pretty extensive section here that talks about remote APIs. And it gives a little bit of information about webhooks and remote RPCs. And then this section here talks about the difference between global and local webhooks. And the difference between the two is webhooks that are specified in the configuration form are global in that they will be applied to all of your alert policies, whereas local webhooks and RPCs are remote APIs that link specifically to specific alert policies and will only be executed for those alert policies. So scrolling down, besides specifying webhooks in configuration forms for global execution or link to policies for local, Webhooks can be configured in MyCalendarAlerts integration hubs of either Zapier or Make. In these cases, the webhooks are made global and automatically linked to all policies, similar to specifying webhooks in the configuration form. In all cases, your policies are the rules which trigger the webhooks, as well as trigger reminder alerts for your contacts. For this demonstration, we will only be focusing on the second option of specifying a webhook through the remote API manager, then linking it to a policy. So we'll need to talk more about policies along with a remote API manager in a minute. Next, you'll want to configure your alert policy. So let's scroll to that section. MyCalendarAlerts will monitor your calendar events and send you event reminders and fire webhooks based on your policies. Policies include optional alert filters for explicitly excluding or including various calendar events. Alert policies are simple but powerful reminder rules. They essentially encompass the logic of your account. So although they are fairly simple, I highly recommend reading this help section to understand the nuances to get the best control of your account. As you will see in a minute, alert policies will list your remote APIs so you can link them to be triggered along with the policy settings. After adding your policies, you'll be ready to add your contacts. Your contacts will be subscribed or linked to your alert policies in order to receive the event reminder notifications. When adding contacts, we will show you how to enable free texting using email to text addresses. Like sync URLs, this too needs a little bit of extra attention, so the help provides important details. Besides the care needed for the calendar sync URL and the contact's email to text addresses, the rest of the procedure is pretty straightforward. All right, now you know where to get help, so you're ready to create your free trial account. I will click on the Create New Account link at the top, which will bring up the form to create the account. In this form, you'll fill out your personal information and provide a login ID and password. Per the terms of service, you must always maintain a valid mobile phone and email address to keep your account. The birth date is a required field, so you'll need to add that as well. Once all your information is entered, just click the check mark that you agree to the terms of service, then press the Create Account button to create your free trial account. But for this demo, I will just use my existing account. Upon submitting, the app will help you get started by creating sample policies, a contact with your personal information, and a sample calendar using our sync URL for demonstration purposes. You will need to modify each of these to suit your needs. Let's take a look at these default settings. First, click on the alert policies on the left. Here you will see two sample policies. The one named Your Event is Tomorrow will be set to fire the day before each calendar event, and the one that's named Your Event is Today will be set to fire the day of each calendar event. Unless you add filters to the policies, these policies will apply to all of your calendar events to send alerts to all linked contacts and to trigger automations to all linked remote APIs. Now click on the policy titled Your Event is Today to see how it's configured. If you scroll to the bottom, you'll get to the description, which is generated automatically. Note that it says to alert on the start date of the event at 10 a.m. So for every event in your calendar, you'll receive an alert at 10 a.m. If this were an Airbnb calendar, for example, you would receive an alert at 10 a.m. on the day of arrival for each guest stay. Now let's go back to the policy list, and we'll click on this one that says your event is tomorrow. Let's scroll down to the description. And here you'll see that it says that it's going to alert on the day before the start of the event at 5:30 p.m. So if this were an Airbnb calendar, it would alert the day before or the evening before each guest's arrival. So you can see here that it has the relative days is one day before the start at 5:30 p.m. You can also specify minutes relative to the time, but for calendars such as short-term rentals like Airbnb, times aren't included in the calendar events. But for personal calendars like Google Calendars, this would make sense if you specify the time of an event inside the calendar events. Well, both of these policies focus on the before or after the start of an event. You can also add policies for the end of an event. So for a short-term rental, Airbnb, for example, this would be the day a guest would be leaving. And then you can assign these policies to your cleaner contacts so that your cleaner service would know when to go in to clean the Airbnb. Now click on the contacts link on the left-hand side and click on the contact that was automatically created. You'll see your contact information and that you'll be subscribed to both of the policies. You can see that at the bottom. So this means that this contact will receive alerts on the day of and the day before every event. Okay, now we're going to go to the account configuration, and the link is found here at the top. Let's look at those settings. There's really only two mandatory fields that need special attention. The rest are optional. The first is easy. It's the time zone. So here you can see the default is set to Arizona. So you'll just need to set that to your local time zone. The next field is a little more tricky. It's the most important field, you could say. It's also the easiest to confuse, and that's the calendar for the download or sync URL. Calendar sync URLs are exposed by all popular online calendars to let third-party apps such as MyCalendarAlerts to download and sync. When you create your account, a sample calendar is provided, but you'll need to change the URL to one used by your calendar. You can see the sample calendar here at the top. This one's called Birthdays, and it's under the calendar info list. Let's click on that link, and here we'll go to the settings, and this is where you'll find the calendar sync URL. There it is right there. So we'll come back to this important field in a minute to revisit where to get instructions for modifying the sync URL with your own personal calendar. We will now look at two key views generated from the calendar and the policies. First, click on the upcoming events link on the left. Within minutes of creating your account, the app should download the calendar, and you should be able to see the events in this list view. When you add your own calendar sync URL, you'll be able to see the events from your calendar in this view. All right, now let's go over to the scheduled alerts link on the left. You should be able to see the scheduled alerts that were generated based on the sample policies that were applied to the events on the calendar. This list shows when the event reminders will be sent to contacts and or remote APIs such as webhooks will be fired, assuming the contacts and policies are linked properly. For the sake of time, I will challenge you to examine the first scheduled alert up here at the top, then examine the associated policy and event to figure out how and why this event was generated. To complete the setup, you'll modify or add policies and contacts to suit your needs, set the time zone, and add calendar sync URL to your own online calendar. Something that is not configured by default are remote APIs, including webhooks and remote procedure calls, or RPCs. Webhooks are automatically set up when you create trigger-based events on Zapier or Make, previously known as Integromat, since MyCalendarAlerts is integrated with these integration hubs. However, sometimes you may need to manually add remote APIs to be triggered outside of these hubs. As mentioned earlier, if I go back to the configuration form, you can see that there is a field here for a global webhook or RPC that can be called for all alert policies. However, we will instead go to look at how to link remote APIs to individual policies. So if you click on the drop-down menu, you will see a link for Remote API Manager. I will add a webhook to the Remote API list so you can see how that works. So I'll click on the new Remote API button, and here you'll give some kind of a label. And for the dropdown, you'll select webhook / REST hook. And then here in the remote API URL, you'll paste a URL address for your remote API. So for this demonstration purposes, I'm using a site called Pipedream. And although the webhook shows .NET, the actual site to access is pipedream.com. Again, I'm just using the Pipedream listener to test the webhook, but typically you would add your webhook from something like an integration hub such as IFTT, or a webhook from a smart home platform such as Home Assistant. So once I press that add button, comes up with flashes a message saying successful, and now it's brought back to the forum. And now I can test this out by going to the link here to test remote APIs. And so here it populates this test form with the webhook that I just created. And here I could put in any test data in any of these fields. And then just press Test API. And up here, you'll see that the API remote response got a 200, and 200 means successful. You can then confirm by looking at the data on the webhook site. So in my case, I'm using pipedream.com. So I'll go there. Go to my test section. And I'll select an event. Get this drop down, and then make sure you select the latest one posted. And look at the body. And there's the hello world that we typed in as the data. So note that at this point, the API is configured, but they're not active yet. So let's see how to link these remote APIs to policies to be fired. Okay, let's go back to my calendar alerts, and we'll go back to the alert policies list. Let's select this policy. Your event is tomorrow. You'll notice right now it's showing that no policies or remote APIs are linked. If we go into this, scroll to the bottom, and there's the webhook that we just created. If I check that and then save, now it's going to be linked. So now anytime this policy gets fired, all webhooks linked to this policy will be triggered. And of course, any contacts that link to this policy will also receive an alert. Let's now modify the policy for the Airbnb use case where we want our cleaning service to get an alert that a guest is leaving so that they can go and clean the house. To do that, I need to change the relative days to 0, meaning on a specific day. And I'll change the before is fine, I leave that. And then I change the relative start or end to end, meaning the end of event, which would be the same day a guest would leave. So I'll just leave the time for now, but you probably would want to change that to like 10 a.m. or whatever time your cleaning service would want to get the alert. But then I'll go ahead and change the title up here to guest leaving today. And then I'll click save. This would result in an alert firing the last day of an event since it's relative to the end of the event. In this case, the day the guest would leave. And so your cleaner would get an alert stating that your guest is leaving, and then they would know that they could go in and clean the house. Now I want to go back to the scheduled alerts and look at the new alerts that were generated with this policy. And as you can see, there's several new generated scheduled alerts based on this policy. And this column here shows the date and time that the policy will fire. So this is the summary that it will fire 0 days before the event end. Now let's click on the contacts link. For each contact, if you wish to receive free SMS text, you'll need to provide a valid mobile phone number and then select the carrier for the email to text address gateway. So note that the carrier information is automatically detected and configured when you create new accounts, but you should double check and configure manually if needed. You can click on this check mark and it will expand that information. So you can either click on one of the radio buttons, assuming it's one of these top carriers, or there's a drop-down button here for a much larger list of carriers. And then finally, there's a third option here to type in the carrier on this field. For this example, we'll assume that the phone number is for Verizon, so I can just, again, select that in this radio button if it shows up here. Otherwise, I would need to go to the drop-down list or type it in here. So Verizon will be the gateway, and I can save that. And then, assuming everything is correct, you can use this test button, or you can even use a send calendar button at the bottom to test to make sure everything is working. Now, although you wouldn't get an error if it's incorrect, you should assume that if you don't get a text, it failed either because you have the wrong number or a service cell carrier or the cell service provider is blocking the service for some reason. While email to text is a great service for free SMS texting, cell carriers recently started blocking the emails when they perceive it is spamming customers through their services. So unfortunately, MyCalendarAlerts default email address will often get blocked due to overuse. This is mentioned in the help docs for setting up contacts and provides details how you can circumvent the issue by using your own email address. Alternatively, you can configure one of the messaging options using Click Send SMS texting service or the pushover chat app, which are also discussed in the help section. Now let's return to the help to talk about the calendar sync URL. So if I go to the account configuration, as mentioned earlier in this step, you can see that there's some links on how to get the sync URL for various popular calendars. But if you scroll to the bottom, you'll see this link here for the help section for calendar sync URLs. I'm going to click on this link, and this gives much more detailed information for each of those calendars. So if I scroll down to the Google Calendar, we're going to use that as an example to basically give you a feel for how it works. I'm going to go ahead and open up another tab and bring up my calendar. From here, you'll find your calendars on the left-hand side in the section My Calendars. If I hover over the right side of the calendar, you'll see these vertical ellipses, and you can click on that and then choose Settings and Sharing. From here, you could go to the Access Permissions, and before you can get the link, you should first note if your calendar is public or private. if this is checked, it means it's public. By default, this is private and unchecked, but this calendar was made public. Now, once you determine public or private, you could go to the Integrate Calendar section. From here, you will see two iCal format URLs. Actually, one is hidden. The top one is public, and the bottom one is secret. And so the public one can only be used for public calendars. So don't try to use this if your calendar is private. You'll have to use this one unless you make your calendar public. The secret one, however, can be used for both private and public calendars, and you can reset this calendar URL if you feel some need to. You can learn more on why it's private here. But since mine is public, I'm going to just right-click and select copy, and now I have it on the clipboard and ready to put it in my configuration. Okay, so let's go back to the configuration. And you can either edit this calendar or create a new one. I'll go ahead and create a new calendar. And I'll go ahead and paste the URL that we have in our clipboard. And I'll give it label birthday cal 2. And then you can add it now. You should also enable the calendar. And so you can use this test button to make sure it's a valid sync URL. And here it popped up success confirmed valid calendar sync URL. So we know we're good to go. But when you click the add button, it won't let you add or save a calendar record without a valid calendar sync URL. So I'll go ahead and click add. And then if I go back to configuration, now you see my second calendar here and it shows enabled. Now, if I go back to upcoming events link on the left, now you see a second tab here. And if I click on that, okay, it's already updated. So you wouldn't see anything here unless the calendar had been downloaded and synced and this list created. It's not going to look any different from the other birthday calendar because we're using the same sync URL. But there you go. We successfully added a calendar with a sync URL using Google Calendars as an example. As a test to ensure your calendar configuration is complete, you can create a test policy to generate an alert relative to the next scheduled event. So on this calendar, you can see the next event is going to be December 14th, and we're recording this according to this date, December 4th. So the next event is 10 days away. So I'll go ahead and click on the Add Alert Policy button at the top, and I'll put a title, Test by Doug, and for the relative days, as we said, it's 10 days out, so I'll make that 10. And then this will be before the start of event, which means it will be on the first day of the event. And then the time here I have set for, it puts a time a few minutes out. I'll go ahead and add another minute to that. And then if you want to also include webhooks, you can click on any webhooks that you want it to fire when it goes off. So I'll add that policy. And then the final thing you need to do is you need to go into contacts, click on a contact, and then come down here and subscribe to that policy. Now, assuming we gave ourselves enough time before it fired, maybe I should have put the time a few minutes out. Oh, so we're good to go. So at 5:58, it should fire. If I go to the scheduled alerts, you'll see here also the scheduled alert shows that an alert will fire at 5:58. And so if everything is set up correctly, the webhook will get fired and you'll receive the emails and SMS texts as you have it set up in your contacts. When the time arrives for the scheduled alert to fire, assuming you're subscribed to the policy and your email and cell info are correct, you should receive an email and an SMS text. Once you're done testing, you'll likely just want to go back and change the contact to unsubscribe from the policy. And then that's it. You're done and ready to go. There are many other features, so explore help and the various records to see what options are available. Good luck, and please let us know if you have any questions or comments or run into any problems. Thank you and happy automating.